Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the International GT Open here for round 6 at Monza, Italy. We go racing at the Temple of Speed, and once again, the championship being tightly contested, we come here to the Autodromo Monza, the 5.793 kilometer circuit, a clockwise track, 11 corners, 7 right, 4 left, 70 minutes of racing with a driver change window, 28 minutes to the 42nd minute, and it will certainly, I'm sure, develop into a fascinating encounter. Plenty of the fans now moving inwards and onwards into the circuit and into the grandstands as well to watch what can only be described as a fabulous race. We've got many guests here that are looking to come in and join the action. Of course, we've had to deal with quite the deluge of rain all day long, which we didn't get to see in qualifying, but as the day went on, we saw plenty of it hurtling from the skies. We have got confirmation from race control that the race will start behind the safety car, and once again, we want to pass over our thoughts with that of Andrew Gilbert, who unfortunately sustained a nasty crash yesterday in practice, and with the car now out of action heading into the race this afternoon, of course he is recovering at the moment in hospital from a fractured leg. But we wish him all the very best from us here at the International GT Open and the GT Sport organisation. My name, of course, is George Morgan. Joining me in the commentary box is Chris Stevens. How are you doing, Chris?
Hey, George. Yes, it was interesting qualifying this morning. Maximilian Paul and Team Oregon leaving it very late in the day to end up setting the eventual pole time, sacrificing an extra set of tyres that they were hoping to save, but they have had to use that set and get at pole position ahead of Carol Bash, who lines up on the front row of the grid alongside him and on Pro-Am pole as well. And just to second your thoughts on Andrew Gilbert there, of course, we've had very difficult conditions throughout the entire week here at Monza. It's been very stormy weather all week long, and of course we've seen that so far today as well. Yesterday when Andy had his incident, it was no different, and today we've seen some treacherous conditions and all the right calls being made by race control up to this point, of course, with many races starting behind the safety car, and that's why we will be starting behind the safety car for this one as well, even though thankfully the rain itself has abated for now, but of course we still have a very wet track out there.
Yeah, but they couldn't stop this man, Maximilian Paul, a sensational last lap in qualifying to grant him pole position. And whereas Carol Bash looked like he was going to keep on pole position, unfortunately it wasn't to be. Maximilian Paul proven to be the spoke in that particular wheel, but it didn't dampen Carol Bash's spirits. He had a grandiose smile at the end of it. He knew that it was a wonderful lap and well worthy of the pole at the very end. And despite that, still starting on the front row of the grid, and a great opportunity here for them to potentially put a big turn in the screw in terms of the Pro-Am standings. Here is our P3 driver. It's another Oregon car. It's Dan Arrow, fresh after the incident that he had at Red Bull Ring. Remember, the car very much veering on its side. It was kind of I suppose a double-edged weekend really for the Oregon team, achieving a 1-2 in qualifying, but then of course the results weren't necessarily indicative of that double front row, but they did achieve a race win at the very start of the weekend.
Well, yeah, it was a real tale of two tales going on down there at Oregon, because the sister car, the 19, just had an absolutely horrendous weekend with no points scored. We just caught a glimpse there of Aaron Walker, his third weekend in the championship, and easily his best performance so far in qualifying, putting it on the second row of the grid. He's got a new teammate this weekend, James Wallace. So a pair of 17-year-old Brits line up in the number 6 Get Speed Mercedes. This is the championship leading Optima Motorsport McLaren 720S GT3 Evo of Sam Dehan and Charlie Fagg. Sam Dehan putting that car in 6th place on the third row of the grid. This is 2nd place in the Pro-Am standings, Nicolo Schiro, sharing the car with Nicolo Rossi as well. And that car also 2nd in the Pro-Am standings as well. In fact, the championship leading car, Eddie Cheever, Marco Pulcini, AF Corsa Ferrari, only lining up 11th place overall for this one.
Yeah, coming towards the end of towards the tail end of the season as well. This man, Jamie Stanley, alluding to the fact that this could be the last couple of rounds we see the Ferrari 488 that they're driving at this moment in time. So they're hoping to give it a grandiose retirement, I think, after the end of the season. Having spoken to Laurent de Meus only the other day, they are putting measures in place for the 296 in the future. Of course, we've got to talk about the grand return as well from Optimum Motorsport's very own Joe Osborne and Nick Moss, of course, runners-up in last season's championship against against the Oregon pairing of Leonardo Polcini and Benjamin Hites. They're marking their return. We're going to take you through the highlights of race 1 at Austria, and of course it was 2 Oregon cars leading the way, but not forgetting the Altitude Racing car also making its way down the inside as well. It was a grandiose start though from the Motor Park pairing of Marcos Seibert and Diego Menchaca. They of course tried to elevate their placings, only to be frustrated earlier on. Charlie Fagg would also be left frustrated after the car stopped heading through the tail end of the race, but it would be Oregon taking victory with Pierre-Louis Chauvet and Maximilian Paul. Race 2 got underway. This time it was Optimum on top spot. Charlie Fagg under no illusions this time after the car failed on him the day before. He managed to lead away at the very get-go. A coming together between Pirolini as well and that of the many others, as well as the other Oregon car as they fought in the early moments of the race as they all fought for position through the first sector. We saw then a scary moment. Dan Arrow pivoting the car, heading down the final sector, careering with the barrier by the Jochenring curve and ending up very nearly on its side, only to come to a shuddering halt. Coming across the line, it would be Riccardo Agostini and Nicola Marinangeli taking the Ferrari 296's first ever win in International GT Open competition. And this is how the championship now looks. Round 6, we're heading into this one with Charlie Fagg on 98 points, 1 point behind Diego Menchaca and Marcos Seibert, who unfortunately will not be partaking in the next 2 rounds here, Chris, because he's heavily involved in the LMS Championship, which he's also currently leading, but they've got a really good driver standing in his stead.
Yes, Thomas Neubauer deciding to stand in for him, but as formation lap gets underway, here's the grid.
Here is the grid. Maximilian Paul on pole position alongside Carol Bash on the front row of the grid. P3 goes to Dan Arrow and Aaron Walker, making up a very young partnership in 4th place as well. P5 would of course go to Timo Rumpfkeil, an absolutely sensational result there for the AM contingent. Samuel Dehan in 6th as well. 5th place would go to that of 7th place, sorry, would go to that of Nicolo Schiro, and that of Jamie Stanley in 8th place as well. 9th going to Thomas Neubauer, as well as Simon Riker in 10th for East Talent Audi. 11th place for Eddie Cheever. 12th place going to the returning Joe Osborne as well for the Optimum Motorsport team. Mikael Pitamba in 13th with Nicola Marinangeli in 14th. 15th place would go to that of Christian Korzanowski, Axel Blom in 16th place. Andrea Montemini, after having some issues in qualifying earlier on, he's starting in 17th place with Emmanuel Maria Tabaki in 18th place. 19th goes to Kiki Sack-Nana with Dexter Muller lining up alongside him in 20th place for SPS Performance. 21st place goes to Ernst Kirkmeyer and Baron Motorsport with Giuseppe Cipriani here with the Il Baroni Rampante team. Alessandro Cosi in 23rd, Samporn Zhao starting 24th place himself. 25th, well, that goes to Frederick Yusei, Jean-Claude Sada lining up in 26th place. 27th going to Stuart Proctor with Pascal Bachmann, represented the Street Art Aston Martin team in 28th and last place. But Chris, now safety car conditions, obviously we're going to be under safety car ruling for the race start. Different set of affairs this time. Yeah,
so it's not a formation lap, as I said earlier. The clock has started. We're down from 70 minutes, so this will be included in the race distance. But yeah, this is kind of new territory for a lot of the drivers, because we haven't had a wet race all season long, and now of course plenty of these drivers are experienced in wet conditions. Maybe some of them haven't driven a GT3 car in the wet before, or maybe even on this tyre. So it is going to be a voyage of discovery for a lot of these drivers.
Yeah, it certainly will be, and they'll take the safety car again for at least another lap. But Dan Arrow, who we're currently riding on board with, of course, having that scary moment back at the Red Bull Ring, the car up on its side, of course. It's double-ended, really, like we said. Of course, the Oregon team had a double car lockout up at the front row of the grid. It was a sensational qualifying for that particular race for Dan Arrow, but race 2, a vastly different story, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. And the assistant team obviously has been going absolutely fantastically, but the 19 crew left Red Bull Ring with no points. There was the fuel pump issue in the first race, and then of course the very late collision for Dan Arrow at the end of the second race as well. A couple of housekeeping points actually, just as we were going through the grid. Both the 33 Benaldi and the number 8 Il Baroni Rampante machines picked up 2 place grid penalties because They were deemed to have caused collisions during free practice. We've talked about the weather, and that was certainly a factor at play there, but there were 2 incidents at turn 1 during practice yesterday, and those 2 cars have picked up grid penalties.
Yeah, and quite a few of the handicaps as well being dished out. Of course, going to that, Diego Menchaca, Thomas Neubauer, they've got 10 seconds. 10 seconds for Nicola Marinangeli and Riccardo Agostini after that performance to take the race win last time at Red Bull Ring. Pierre-Louis Chauvet and Maximilian Paul, they've got 10 seconds to honour as well. Sam Dahan, Charlie Fag, plus 5 seconds. Nicolo Rossi, Nicolo Schiro, 10 seconds. Marcin Jedlinski and Karol Bash with a hellacious 20 seconds to fill at this point. Alessandro Cosi and Giorgio Sinagiotto, plus 10 seconds. And Heiko Neumann and Timo Rumpf with plus 5 seconds. And Kiki Saknana, Adam Osaka with 10 seconds to add to their pit stop time as well.
And of course, the big one there is the 777 Olim, which has got to take 20 seconds. That's the team that has just thrown themselves back into the Pro-Am Championship battle, having taken back-to-back victories at the Red Bull Ring, and in fact their 3rd victory of the season in that class. The safety car is going to be in this lap, but of course for Jedlinski and Bash, that's going to be quite a big sting. That's to take 20 seconds of success penalty.
Certainly will be, and as you can see, the gap now between the safety car and the front runners. Of course, Maximilian Paul now is starting to stretch, and as the safety car comes in, it will be down to Maximilian Paul to get them back underway as we go green for the first time here in race conditions this weekend at Monza in the International GT Open, and it's already provided thrills and spills. Season on season, it provides thrills and spills in terms of the championship fights. Could be another chapter closed here very, very soon as we lead up towards the final round of Barcelona. But here now, as the flags wave yellow, they'll soon wave green, and Maximilian Paul, starting pole, is going to put pedal to the metal, and it is go, 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 go. He leads them down towards the first chicane as well, being hunted down by Karol Bash in the Audi R8 LMS. In behind as well, you've got Dan Arrow looking to try and get himself involved in proceedings as well. Look at the Walker car as well, around the outside. Get Speed Performance now trying to attack Timo Rumpf in the Motor Park Mercedes, but it's Timo who's got the upper hand. He's in 4th place. A few cars have come to the escape road, including that of the other Motor Park car. Yeah,
so Timo Rumpf doing a fantastic job getting around the pro Get Speed Mercedes straight away at the start. It was a great launch. It was side by side all the way down the straight. This is the Pro-Am race leader here, Eddie Chiva, getting up behind one of the other cars. I can't quite make out who that was, and now is that the Optimum
Red Zebra
car? Yes, that's got it all wrong under braking into the 2nd chicane, and it was the Riker Audi ahead of Chiva, as we saw Dahan rejoining there. Been a very difficult start for the championship leader by the looks of it, because he's dropped a couple of places.
Yeah, quite a few drivers taking a few chances as well. Leader of the Pro-Am contingent is Karol Bash, currently sat in 2nd place and still hunting down after Maximilian Paul. Dan Arrow still in 3rd, Timo Rumpf after that blistering start, getting past Aaron Walker from the get-go for that 4th place. Has certainly been successful on this occasion. Moving up the order as well, we see Sam Dahan still in 7th, Nicolo Schiro having a great run as well, but Dahan now dropping down through the field. Now, I do wonder whether that's got something to do with taking the off-track. He's now down to 9th place. The timing tower just sorting itself out. Thomas Neubauer now moves back up as well. He's up to 7th. Jamie Stanley now 8th as well. And we've got a battle for the lead up at the front end. Enter now Karol Bash, who's going to look and hunt around the outside here in the initial stint under green flag conditions. And it's the Olymp Racing Audi R8 that now powers itself into the lead. It's Bash here for Karol Bash. Leads the way here at Monza.
Yeah, that Audi that looks very good in a straight line in qualifying. And I don't know if there was a mistake from Maximilian Paul as well out of Ascari, but the Audi just able to drive clean past the Lamborghini on the way into the final corner. And yes, Karol Bash, the Pro-Am car, takes the overall lead now as we have just over 60 minutes left on the clock.
Very well has very high expertise as a racer. Christian Korzanowski, the other Olymp car, now up to 14th ahead of Nicola Marinangeli as well. So a very, very good run, certainly from him at the very start. Currently holding on to 2nd in the AM contingent. He's got an awful long way to go, though, if he wants to try and challenge Timo Rumpf, who's currently sat P4 in proceedings, and still got Aaron Walker in behind, who's only 7/10 away. As we ride on board here with the car belonging to Eddie Chiva, 11th place on track overall, as he now starts to verge up on his well, should we say, the car in front of him, the East Talent Audi belonging to Simon Riker, outside line here for Cheever. And I tell you what, just cut away there very nearly, catching out the Optimum Motorsport McLaren as it made its way in towards the Lesmo.
Yeah, both of them skipping over the chicane there, Dahan slightly less so. But yeah, difficult couple of corners there for both of those guys, and that's 9th, 10th and 11th at the moment. And Cheever here at the moment, surely he's got to let Simon Riker back through, I'd have thought. He did pick up a penalty for passing off the track in Red Bull Ring last time out. So yeah, doesn't want to get something again. He has let Riker back through. Oh no, it's just updating on the timing screen, so the other way around. So no, Cheever's still ahead by the looks of it. Yeah,
at this point as well, looking behind Joe Osborne, not too far away either. Had a very good start in his own right, and of course has been certainly prosaic here at this round himself. Remember, it was Nick Moss and Joe Osborne who would win race 2 here last season. Currently see themselves at this point right in the thick of it, 12th place, as we now ride on board once again with Cheever.
Yeah, that car had some turbo issues during qualifying, so Osborne wasn't quite where we expected him to be, but hopefully all sorted now. As look at this, Cheever's still ahead of Riker here and actually piling the pressure on Sam Dahan down the front straight. So Dahan defensive line, or can we call it defensive? It's the wet line, and look at this, Cheever drops right up alongside, and he's got him. What a move! Supreme under braking there, and got it out around the outside. So that's a sensational move from Cheever. That puts him up into 9th place, the championship leader. Not enjoying these conditions by the looks of it, George.
No, the GT World Challenge Sprint champion now, and making some serious moves, as is now Nicolo Schiro, who looks down the inside of the 17 Thomas Neubauer car, who has to take the escape himself now. That's not the first time he's had to do that this race, as Nicolo Schiro once again comes out on top ahead of Neubauer, heading through Lesmo 1 and very soon Lesmo 2.
Yeah, so Neubauer there, he's been thrown in the deep end here, let's say, because not only has he been chucked into a car that is fighting for the championship, Marcos Seibert prioritising the European Le Mans Series LMP3 championship with Cool Racing that he is currently leading. The last 2 rounds of that championship clashing with the last 2 rounds of the GTOpen. So Neubauer's been thrown into a championship battle, but he's also been thrown in on a weekend where we've had some of the worst conditions we've seen all season long.
And I bet he'll feel the weight of responsibility as well, because Diego Menchaca, in terms of a driver's standpoint as well, in terms of taking the title. So there we go, that's what's on the line. Big responsibility here for Neubauer, as we now see the 2 Oregon cars once again together, joined at the hip, very much like they were at the very start at Red Bull Ring, only this time it's mid-race. And here with 57 and 30 still to go, Schiro once again under pressure here from Neubauer, who has a look down the inside and is trying to curtsy the Mercedes AMG GT3 past that of the Ferrari that's right in front of him here. Down the long stretch they go once again to commence yet another lap this time. Schiro under extensive pressure, Carol Bash still out in front and advancing his lead here by 2.3 seconds as the 2 Oregon cars get closer and closer together.
Yeah, Dan Arrow really putting the pressure on Maximilian Ball here, and this is the closest we've seen the number 19 to the 63, which has generally been the faster combination throughout the season. Carol Bash absolutely flying at the moment, was nearly a full second quicker than Maximilian Paul last time out. The gap up to 2 seconds. Now we've got a 10-second time penalty for the Streetar Aston Martin, and that is for an incident in the pit lane, which I can only imagine would have happened before the start of the race.
Yeah, well, he's currently 5 seconds off down at the back of the field at this moment in time, so I don't think it's going to make a huge difference as to their current situation. Obviously not having the best of starts at the moment, but the Oregon cars now coming through the first and second Lesmo and now down the Seraglio straight. And Dan Arrow, who we're currently riding on board with, is going to look to try and bring himself closer and closer to his teammate, but the gap has grown out extensively. And at this point, he sees himself, whilst he was 8.5 tenths out now, I think that gap might be slightly wider as they head through now towards Ascari. Late on the brakes, though, for Dan Arrow. Ooh. As now we see them come through again. I think he might be caught unawares heading through the initial part of the Ascari chicane.
Dan took quite a lot of curve there, as now look at this, is the SBS Automotive Performance Mercedes. Mikhail Patamba getting a little crossed up into the Della Roggia chicane. But yes, Dan Arrow having a big moment over the curbs at at Ascari, and I think that's produced a bit of gap actually between the two Oregon cars. It's about a second now.
Yeah, Christian Korzanowski as well, half a second in behind that of Nicola Marinangeli. Once again, these two coming together still as we rejoin Maximilian Paul up in second place, 2 seconds now off Carol Bash up at the front end. Dan Arrow 1.6 away from his teammate, 6 laps already consumed now in this race. And it's interesting to note here as well, Chris, they're taking that inside line, that inside lane, which must be the driest point of the track in comparison to the lane on the outside.
Potentially, it'll just where the grip is. It's not always a matter of which one is better than the other. Of course, you tend to go off the traditional racing line in these kind of conditions as well, and we have seen a variety of different lines being used so far since the rain has come down a few hours ago. Just starting to dry up. Actually, I almost wonder if anybody will gamble on slicks when the time comes, not if they keep doing stuff like that. So that is the 55, Jamie Stanley getting a little crossed up, and I think Eddie Cheever ended up across the road. Simon Riker's gone across the road as well, as has the 51, of course, the Ferrari as well, as more cars taking the escape road at Della Roggia than the actual track itself at the moment.
Yeah, Nicola Marinangeli looked to take a really wide line through the first Lesmo as well, and now has to face Joe Osborne. Of course, a vastly experienced driver has been now right on board with Eddie Cheever, who's going to make moves himself too as they now make their way down through towards the next chicane. Jamie Stanley alongside him as well as they make their way down through towards this next chicane. Of course, got to get in tight here now as they hug it together, but still, though, Cheever can't quite find a way through, but he will have a better line on the outset of this section. Jamie Stanley ever resistant as they head out of Ascari. Now down towards the Curva Alboreto once again, and it's who's better when it comes to the throttle application on the outset of the Curva Alboreto this time. Who is going to time their braking point? Who's going to time the throttle the best as they head in towards this next segment? The AF Corse is now together once again, celebrating, of course, their first win last round back at Red Bull Ring. But, of course, it would be Agostini and Marinangeli to grant them a 2.96 victory in the International GT Open, but just enough at the helm of Jamie Stanley to keep Cheever at bay.
Yeah, just about for now. Of course, it's the old Ferrari 488 versus the new Ferrari 296, or the V8 in Jamie Stanley's car against the 3-litre twin-turbo V6 in the 27 behind him. And two very different machines here. The look at this, Cheever getting ducking up from behind here, Stanley's car. Now, was that a hand signal on coming out the left-hand window there from Stanley? I think it was. Just sort of going either go on by or clear back. But yeah, it looked like Stanley was sticking his hand out the window there.
Well, two F courses coming together, and obviously team interplay involved in some way, shape or form. But coming through the Roggia will be Eddie Cheever, who comes out on top ahead of Jamie Stanley, who will be swapping out for Laurent de Meus. We allude to the fact that this will be one of the last or fewer rounds that the 488 will be seeing here under the helm of Laurent de Meus and Jamie Stanley. Of course, many of the teams now moving to the brand new 296 that we have seen hit the foray in the world of motorsport in recent times, as now we see the East Talent Audi as well trying to gain. Now, this is an old rivalry that we've enjoyed seeing this season. Remember, they came together back at Spa-Francorchamps where they went toe-to-toe to decide who would take the endurance race win back at Spa. It was a pleasure to watch as well. And I think certainly from your point, Chris, because of course you commentated that one.
I did, yes.
It was a juicy contest.
It was fantastic, wasn't it? Yes, and of course that's one of 2 wins that the Optimum car has taken so far this season. The other one coming up, Paul Ricard, the Audi squad from East Talent, yet to take victory, despite having been quite prominent in this championship fight so far. And that is Stuart Proctor going for a spin at the Della Roggia. All rung under braking there by the looks of it, and skipping over the curb there as well, and eventually pointing in the right direction. So all good there. And now look at this. It's Max Paul closing up a little bit on Carol Bash by the looks of it. I think it is, because he was 0.3 quicker last time round.
He was, and he was 2.8 ahead of Max Paul not too long ago as well. So it's now dropped down to 1.6. And Paul really starting to go to work here on Carol Bash. And the gap between Dan Arrow and Paul is in fact enlarged into 3 seconds. So there we have it. Paul is pushing here at Monza. As we now see as well, Timo Rumpfkeil as well taking that inside line, of course. We've seen some alternate lines being taken by many of these drivers here so far, obviously trying to disillude the wet conditions that have threatened us, certainly so far, and a sideways slide from Carol Bash heading out of Lesmo 2, Lesmo 1, sorry, into Lesmo 2. A very attractive moment there for the Audi R8 LMS as we now see them venture down the Seraglio straight. And again, I think Paul is reeling him in here, Chris. 1.2 seconds now.
Yeah, gap's definitely coming down. We'll get the sector times as they go over the timing beam just before they turn left for Ascari, and the gap's now under a second. He took another 3/10 out of it, and that's with Bash pushing as well, because that was a personal best for him. Yeah, Maximilian Paul arriving on the scene very quickly indeed.
He is. He's getting closer and closer, and we could yet see another swap between the pair. Of course, we saw Bash take the lead earlier on towards the very start of the race when we had the restart after the safety car. But Maximilian Paul now threatening here at this very sensitive stage in the race, because prior, or certainly after this, we will have the driver change window opening up in 7 minutes and 30. So it gives essentially only a small matter of, say, a certain number of laps before Maximilian Paul decides to box and bring in Pierre-Louis Chauvet as they make their way down the straight now. Once again, 1.1 seconds the gap, the difference between the times. Already, though, Bash finding that little bit extra in that final sector just to help him along. But the fastest lap to boot here, Maximilian Paul taking that with a 2-flat 3:27.
Yeah, great pace for Maximilian Paul in the Lamborghini at the moment. So the gap's come down another 0.4 of a second since the start of the previous lap. Gap hovering around 1.1 at the moment, but Maximilian Paul closing in on Carol Bash here. And of course, yeah, for Carol Bash, the overall lead is not really what matters. His job is to pull the gap to Shiro and Chiva and Stanley, because they're his Pro-Am rivals at the moment. Look at this, getting fairly congested down here. Dehaan starting to pull away a little bit from Simon Riker. Joe Osborne arriving on the scene as well, with our most recent race winner, Nicolo Marinangeli, at the back of this 4-car queue as well. Dehaan here leading them, but Riker coming under a bit of pressure now by the looks of it.
Yeah, Joe Osborne now looking to try and maximise everything heading through the Rogier chicane. Eddie Chiva, we saw in the background as well, looking to really go to town in his car too, just skipping through the first and second Lesmo, as we see Thomas Neubauer now starting to room up here on Nicolo Shiro. Down the Seraglio straight they go. Once again, the flashing lights on the back of the cars, obviously due to the wet conditions that we have in amongst us here at Monza. The lights now ablaze here on the front of the Kessel Racing Ferrari as it now hurtles through the Ascari chicane, making sure it hits its apexes in order to maximise the delta, trying to keep Thomas Neubauer, who is a champion in his own right in GT World Challenge in terms of the sprint category, running very wide as well on exit. Of course, has won championships in the sprint category as well as its standard endurance race that we have seen from time to time again. And Thomas Neubauer taking advantage here, heading through Kerber Alboreto, looking to come in tight against Nicolo Shiro, who might well pay the price on the escape, but not this time. Shiro managing to keep him at bay, and yet another fastest lap for Maximilian Paul as he brings the gap down to within a second again.
Yeah, much more even that time. The gap about a second. It was only about a 10th between Paul and Bash last time around. And look at this, they are hunting for the inside line. Again, definitely looks like the favoured line at the moment, doesn't it, for breaking the first corner. I almost wonder if anyone will be brave enough to go for slicks by the time that the pit stops come around. Of course, we've got another 5 minutes till the window opens, but then the window lasts for about 8. So, yeah, there is time for it to dry up still, potentially. It'd be a brave call, for sure, but somebody might fancy a Hail Mary. Neubauer fancied a Hail Mary there on the inside of the La Rogier chicane, but sure, doing a good job to keep the series, not debutant, returnee at bay.
Thomas Neubauer now looking to try and push the issue, running very wide, skidding over the curbs as he made his way through Lesmo 1. They have, of course, got Eddie Chiva in behind them as well as they now make their way down the Seraglio straight again. Nicolo Shiro frustrating Neubauer. And now heading down this next straight before the Ascari chicane. They'll try and light things up heading through this section of curbs as well. There's Aaron Walker, who's in pretty much a world of his own right now. 3.4 seconds in between him and Timo Rumpfkeil. The same could be said for Rumpfkeil and Dan Arrow further up, who is currently 5.6 off Max Paul. And look at Max Paul's time, half a second now. He's cut into that of Carol Bash. It is now 5/10 between the pair, as now we see Max going to town here at this point. We've also got Thomas Neubauer looking to try and have a look on the outside here of Nicolo Schiro, but a major development up at the front end as well, as things start to come together as we head in towards the driver change window.
Yep, just 3 minutes left until that opens. There is the lead gap. It is 0.8 of a second as they went over the timing line, and Maximilian Paul starting to creep up to the back of that Olymp Audi. And they're leaving Dan Arrow for dust a little bit now, because the gap's 5.5 seconds. He's in a bit of a race of his own, as is Timo Rumpfkeil, who's doing an astonishing job to hang on to this 4th place spot at the moment. That is truly exceptional, and well ahead of his nearest AM rival, which is Christian Korzanowski, in 14th place overall.
Yeah, they have taken some time to test here, as Timo Rumpfkeil has got some expertise around this Monza circuit, knows it quite well, and now coming back here using it to their full potential. 4th place at the moment, 5.9 away from Dan Arrow in 3rd place now, as we see Thomas Neubauer again having a look on the outside, or on the inside of Nicolo Schiro coming into the Roger chicane. Eddie Cheever now 1 second in behind these two. Maximilian Paul now still within half a second now, as we see once again Neubauer going wide, taking that aggressive line, then heading through towards the first Lesmo. But Schiro still holding on to P6 now, and Thomas Neubauer just once again looking down the inside, just to show in the mirrors, just to let Schiro know what he's all about. Heading down now the straight yet again here at Soralio. In behind, we have, of course, got Jamie Stanley, who's looking to try and recover against Eddie Cheever, but 3.6 is the gap between that pairing as well, as they make their way down towards now the Ascari chicane. Schiro going defensive again. Neubauer right in his mirrors here, and literally is giving him a real headache here, Chris.
I mean, he's been in the mirrors of this car since pretty much the first lap, and they're getting very greedy with the curbs on the left-hand side of Ascari. Also with the momentum side by side for the leader of the race, though. Maximilian Paul, it looks like he's just about drawn clear of the Audi ahead of him. Now, presumably there was a move set up at the Parabolica, but Maximilian Paul trying to get up alongside. The Audi's fighting back on the outside line, but nothing Carol Bash can do to stop Maximilian Paul. He's into the lead of the race.
He certainly is. Maximilian Paul, he started pole, he lost P1, he took it back, here with 43 to go. It's now Oregon now spearheading the direction at the front end of the classification. Bash now down to second, Dan Arrow 6.2 back here at this point, with 6.4 back Timo Rumpfkeil as well. Nicolo Schiro still doing battle here with Thomas Neubauer, but Schiro cutting the chicane in the initial first and second corners in behind Cheever, who's also trying to bring himself into the fight, as we run on board with Eddie Cheever here in the F Corsa Ferrari. But that was cool and calculated by Maximilian Paul. His pace has been extraordinary here, Chris.
He's been reeling him in, and that fastest lap of the race again, 1:59.983 last time round. They were separated by just 78 thousandths of a second as they went over the timing line at the start of the lap, and Maximilian Paul's already made short work of building up a healthy margin here of about 3/4 of a second. As now look at that, once again Dehan having to go through the runoff area there, and oh no, is that Marin Angeli getting past? Oh, there was contact there with Joe Osborne. Now this is not the first time, as we see a piece there flying off, that particular car has come to blows with an Optimum car. We all remember what happened at Hungary, only this time he's dishing it out to the sister car.
Maybe ask Pietro Pirolini for a few choice words, I'm not sure. But heading down now the Soralio Straight and in towards the Ascari chicane, Joe Osborne is not going to go down without a fight, I can assure you. Marin Angeli holding on to that advantage ahead of him right now. Osborne, though, currently sat in 13th place. A little look in the mirrors just to let Marin Angeli know that he's there. 3/10 the gap now as the Nicola Marin Angeli, who did compete in Euro Formula Open last season, still under the GT Sport organisation now, here this time in the International GT Open, takes that very aggressive inside line, heading down towards the next right at Alboreto. Further up then, the East Talent Audi of Simon Riker, 1.2 away from Sam Dehan, who's in the top 10, occupying that 10th place, and 6 seconds in behind Jamie Stanley. Joe Osborne trying to maximise his straight line speed by taking a well-rounded view out of Alboreto. And there you can see Sam Dahan, who's, I think, got a little bit of company behind him. Of course, Simon Riker now 1.4 behind. And then, of course, we've got Christian Korzanowski not too far away either. And look at this, Eddie Cheever now on the back of Thomas Neubauer. And this has been coming because, of course, Neubauer has been stuck behind Nicolo Schiro for quite some time, and it's brought Cheever into the fight.
Certainly has. Neubauer, as it looks an awful lot closer to Schiro this time around, heading towards the second chicane, and he's looking towards the inside once again. But again, Shiro's got it covered, doing a fantastic job of hanging on to this place. And Cheever here with a clean run out of the chicane. He may well find himself some momentum by the time they turn right into the Lesmo, but no, Neubauer able to fend him off.
Yeah, he is at the moment. Of course, Eddie Cheever currently sitting in third in the Pro-Am classification. Nicolo Schiro is standing in second in the Pro-Am fight. Carol Bash currently leading that fray. We've got a car coming into the pits. This is part of the driver change window. Conrad Grunwald steps in for Jean-Claude Sada as part of the AF Corsa team. Remember, they won the Golf 12-hour at the very start of the year in their AM classification. Philip Barron steps in for Ernst Kirkmeyer, as well as we ride back on board here with Eddie Cheever coming through Ascari yet again and still haunting the rear of Thomas Neubauer's car.
Yeah, so driver change window open. We've got a 5-second time penalty for the Michael Patamba and Reese Barr Mercedes for track limits at turns 4 and 5. That's the second chicane, so they've been cutting that a little bit too much. Confirmation at the top of the screen. Yes, let's see what everyone's going to do with this now that the driver change window is open. None of the front runners choosing to dive in just yet.
Plenty of the rear gunners coming in, though. We've got Yannick Mettler, who is looking to step in, remember. Of course, Dexter Muller taking the initial, qualified. Philip Barron steps in for Ernst Kirkmeyer now. Oh, collision coming together. And that is Timo Rumpkarl and Aaron Walker coming to do battle on the outset of the Retrovillo chicane. And Walker now taking the outside line out of the Curva Grande. And we've got another fight as well happening with the other Motorpark car that is still trying to do battle with Nicolo Schiro. Eddie Cheever as well, part of this, but side by side now. Aaron Walker, though, typifying that of Timo Rumpkarl for that 4th place, wheel to wheel, heading through the Rogier, but Walker on top. In comes Neubauer. He's up into 6th. Schiro now demoted to 7th place. Stopped.
Oh, he did just about keep it within the white lines, I think, and has to get a bit rude with Schiro, and Schiro has to get a bit rude with Cheever as well to hang on to the place. So one Motorpark lost a place, one Motorpark car gained a place as well, although looked like at the expense of a little bit of bodywork damage there. Schiro goes a little bit wide out of Lesmo 2, and Cheever's going to come through here. 2 Ferrari 296s side by side here. Schiro will have the inside line by the time they get down to Ascari, and of course this is for class position as well. This is for second in Pro-Am, and Schiro going to stick it to Cheever here on the inside and hang on to that place. But that's an important move for Neubauer because he's moved up into 6th. And next car up the road for him will be Timo Rumpkarl, his team boss, the man who hired him.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of debris on the side of the car as well. We just see it flapping around. I'm not sure whether that was the result of the collision there as well.
I think it was.
I think it must have been. But Thomas Neubauer is suffering with that little bit of debris. But enter Eddie Cheever, who now has a look around the outside of Nicolo Schiro's Ferrari. As they head now down, of course, both Ferrari cars, but not representing the same teams. You've got Kessel Racing and AF Corsa now doing battle here at an Italian track. The Temple of Speed at Monza now as they make their way down through towards the Retrovillo chicane, this time riding on board with Cheever, who's gaining and gaining all the time against Schiro, who goes defensive again, heading down the inside, but an outside aggressive line taken by Cheever through the outside, heading in towards the Retrovillo, but off the circuit, has to cut away again, and he'll have to give that position back, surely.
Yeah, I think he will, and now this is 2 legendary Ferrari teams doing battle here in the International GTOpen. Both of them are just synonymous with the Ferrari brand and running their various cars from the absolute entry level of motorsport right the way up to the top class of GT, and of course AF Corsa also running their hypercar program as well. So in terms of titanic battles between teams, it doesn't get much bigger than this.
No, it certainly doesn't, and what makes it better as well is that they're both Ferrari teams, and here at a track that is So certainly hailed by the Tifosi as well, the Ferrari fans that certainly support them in their abundance here at the Temple of Speed, as now we see obviously a replay of the encounter between that of Aaron Walker and Timo Rumpkeil. They just came together, and oh, I tell you what, Timo was very fortunate actually. That could have pivoted the car.
Yeah.
Aaron Walker just getting in a little bit too deep, and I think just had, some obvious ambitious intentions on his mind, I think.
Well, I mean, for Timo, this could have gone sideways very, very quickly, and of course, it's not really his fight. Again, he's more focused on the category, and look at that, Walker, again, lucky to get away with that, just dipping 2 wheels into the gravel, as look at the Kessel and the air, of course, so Ferrari side by side once again, but this time it's Chiva that comes out on top, just about gets it stopped for the Parabolica, and turns in, and takes 2nd place in that category away from Nicolo Schiro, and it's 7th place overall, and that looked like Neubauer, who was heading for the pit lane, as Schiro's going to come back at Chiva here, surely, right in the slipstream. So 2 identical Ferrari 296s here, but run by 2 very different teams, and heading towards first corner, no change there. And it was Neubauer heading for the pits, and interestingly, that incident between the Motorpark Mercedes and Aaron Walker's GetSpeed Mercedes is under investigation, potentially because Walker ended up getting past Rumpkeil in that instance down the next straight. Yeah,
it looks like it could well be the case. Another fastest lap here for Maximilian Paul, who's consolidating this lead now. 2.8 seconds, nearly 2.9 up at the front end, ahead of Carol Bash. And Dan Arrow still holding his own in 3rd as well, as we now take a look at a big scrap happening here with Yannick Mettler, who's taking them through in towards the next chicane. We've, of course, got Giorgio Serghiotto in the midst of all this too, and a lot of other cars now making their way through, including that the East Talent Audi. Quite a jumble here in this point on the track. Bernaldi Lamborghini further back. Joe Osborne, who, of course, is still in the car. He'll switch over to Nick Moss when the time comes as well. Conrad Grunwald just set himself in behind as well, that of Phil Barron, as we see now Joe Osborne hunting all over the rear here of the AEF Corsa Ferrari, currently sat in front of him.
Yes, and David Fuminelli about to get into the Kessel Ferrari as well. I've just seen him come past our pit lane. Here he is. Yeah, Frederick giving up the spot there for Fuminelli. Of course, this car wasn't with us last time out at Red Bull Ring. Great to see them back. The Street Art Aston Martin, difficult race for them already, with some sort of pit lane incident giving them a time penalty. And, definitely towards the rear of the order at this point. Now we've got 33 minutes left on the clock, 5 minutes left on the driver change, so still plenty of time for these teams to start coming in, as we got a bit of lap traffic being rounded up here by Nicola Marinangeli, who ends up having a bit of a slide out of Parabolica, I think, because it was getting a bit wide there, and the Baron Motorsport car not really choosing to relinquish any ground here. Now that car, interestingly enough, that car has been borrowed by Kessel, because the initial Baron Motorsport one was shunted earlier in the week, so they had to go next door and see if they could borrow one. And look at this, he's not relinquishing anything, and he's gone wide, and this is going to be really, really irking Marinangeli, I'm sure of it, as they're getting very close for comfort. And I think eventually he got it through. Now look at this, is Menchaca a lap down now, having come into the pits. Of course, the guys are being lapped by Yet to Stop. So here it is again. Yeah, that car is definitely a lap down, and God, Marinangeli would be seething at that. And actually, it's ended up costing him a place for position, as Conrad Grunwald was able to get past Philip Barron there. So in being very aggressive with the AF Corsa Ferrari, he's lost a place.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea Montemini now steps out with Gino Forgione stepping into the car. Of course, they had their issues back in qualifying, as now they do the necessary services to the car before them getting back out again. Christian Korsanowski now stepping out for Stanislav Jedlinski, who now steps in at the Olymp Racing Ferrari 296 that they have now in the midst. Its second run out under this team, as we now see them make their way down through towards turn 1 yet again. Still on top at this stage and unusurped is Maximilian Paul, and they have got a small matter of Diego Menchaca in between him and Karel Bash at this stage as they now make their way around Curva Grande. Of course, Menchaca has already done his pit stop. Maximilian Paul still yet to do his and will have to, well, sustain that 10-second handicap that they've got to intervene on. Now we've got Pietro Pirolini jumping in place of Dan Arrow.
Yes, so the sister cars come in the meanwhile from third place, and of course this car is handicap free, but the 63, as you mentioned, George, taking 10 seconds, and the 777 behind it taking 20. So there's a good chance that the 19 will come out in either in the lead or at least, at the very least, in a very good position indeed. Because the Aaron Walker Get Speed Mercedes, that is of course unhandicapped at the moment, but yeah, we'll see what happens, because of course the pro cars behind them are a little bit further down. We've got a mix of pro-am cars ahead of them at the moment. This is Rhys Bard taking over from Mikel Pitamba. That combination took their first podium finish last time out at Red Bull Ring in race number 1. And now look at this, Karel Bash going to have to try and get round Diego Menchaca here. That car is a lap down, having done its pit stop. Bash has not yet. Now we've got Cipriani in, and the 133 Kessel car as well, Murat Tradaroglu, getting into the car. Tradaroglu, who turns 60 tomorrow. Can't imagine a better way of spending a birthday, as the leaders coming into the pits now. So Maximilian Paul going to hand over that car to Pierre-Louis Chauvet, and Karel Bash going to hand over to Marcin Jedlinski in the hopes of securing a third consecutive Pro-Am victory, putting themselves a little bit further up in that championship fight. And now, of course, the one thing we also haven't considered here, George, is that this car, the 63, has slowly been moving up the championship order, and this would bring them just a little bit closer. But they are kind of, again, an outside shot for the championship, and they're doing everything right at the moment. And especially with our championship leaders at the moment, a little bit further down the order. In fact, 12th and 13th, although a couple of cars yet to stop. So Charlie Fagg has gotten aboard the Optimum Motorsport McLaren in the meantime. And this is Nicolo Schiro getting in, Nicola Rossi getting on board the Kessel Ferrari. Christopher Haase about to get into the East Talent Audi as well. That's just gone past us in pit lane as well. And now Nick Moss in the Optimum Motorsport McLaren as well, about to get on board Joe Osborne. It's all action in the pit lane now, and of course this is the very end of the driver change window, so if you haven't made it in yet, then well, you have to be in by now. And it's definitely wet tyres going on board the Optimum McLaren there, so it looks like those will be the order of the day for the remaining 28 minutes of this race as Chauvet joins the track. Yeah, on their outlap, Pirolini did in fact lead the way in terms of those that had stopped prior to all these cars coming in, so it'll be interesting to see where Pietro Pirolini comes out. There he is, Pietro Pirolini right at the tail end here. There's a great chance now that Oregon could have 2 cars up at the front end. Out comes the orange Get Speed performance car as well, so in comes Walker, who's now with Wallace, as now we see Pietro Pirolini come in towards turn 1, and I think, did he cross that white line then? I'd have to look at it again. There were a couple of people who've been caught out on that, but unfortunately, George, I was looking at the other screen, so I can't tell you, unfortunately. But wow, so it's Oregon at the top. It's Oregon 1-2 at the moment with Get Speed in third. Oh no, the Pirolini's lost out. So Wallace has got past there and into second place, and James Wallace debuting in the championship. It's the third driver that they've had partnering Aaron Walker in that car. Another 17-year-old from the UK. And now this is how it happened. Presumably, Pirolini was a little slow out of the first corner, and Wallace just dragged straight past him. But yes, Wallace coming in with a few credentials to his name, including a GT4 championship in the GT Cup series last year back in the UK, and was doing British GT this year before being brought over to the GTOpen. Started out the season in GT4 and moved up to the GT3 car mid-season. And interestingly enough, started oval racing at age 9, but eventually found his way into circuit racing. And, well, now my question, George, is going to be, can Wallace close in on Pierre-Louis Chauvet here? Because
here comes Charlie
we've got
Fagg.
two youngsters fighting up at the front of the field at the moment. And, yes, Charlie Fagg, as you mentioned, making up ground here. That's 8th place he's just secured there from Nicola Rossi. Quite a tall order for Charlie Fagg here to get this car back into a competitive position after the driver change. Of course, that car did end up having to take only 5 seconds of. Oh, look at this! Look how close it is for the lead. All of a sudden, and look at this! Wallace is going down the inside, and he's taken the lead. James Wallace, on his GTOpen debut, suddenly finds himself in the lead. Now, was that a problem there for Pierre-Louis Chauvet? Because it just looked like it wasn't going at all.
Well, a major moment indeed. Certainly here, James Wallace takes the lead, certainly in terms of this race that we're just seeing unfold right in front of us. Confirmed now as part of your timing screen, folks. Pierre-Louis Chauvet down to 2nd place, and whilst it was looking like a pretty picture for Oregon, still does in terms of the team's podium promise, but at this point, whereas they did have a chance to take the race win, they're now up against it. Nicolo Rossi now at the helm here, chasing after Christopher Haase as they now hurtle around the curve at Grande. Haase with the speed makes his way down through towards the Rogier chicane. Let's take a look at this again, and again heading down the inside. He just had the tiger line. Chauvet failed to shut the door, and taking full advantage, James Wallace, of course, someone who has competed at regular sports car level, GT Cup UK as well, where he would clamber onto 3 wins. Charlie Fagg now looking to make some serious moves, made a major play, and is trying to lofty his hopes further up the field. I believe he had Diego Menchaca further up. That's the street art. Oh, big damage.
Yeah, missing a big chunk out of the front left corner there is Jahid Faisal Karim. So presumably he'll sort of limber back to the pit lane. Wow, look at this. So in the meantime, Milos Pavlovic setting the pace on the timing screen. But here, Louis Chauvet, a second behind James Wallace, our new race leader, and that gets me Mercedes. And we were saying that car had hit best qualifying with Aaron Walker at the wheel. And now James Wallace here, putting it into the lead of the race. Now, that car, of course, was unhandicapped. That's why it was able to make up ground, but has passed Pierre-Louis Chauvet for the lead of the race, which is an incredible performance. So James Wallace really, really hitting the ground running here. Fantastic at the moment for the youngster. And I mean, how great is it seeing 2 young guns like James Wallace and Pierre-Louis Chauvet moving up the order? I mean, Chauvet himself is only 21 years old as well. So fantastic to see these young guns. There was Wallace picking a line at some point for the second chicane. And Marcin Jedlinski here is kind of hanging on to the Oregons, actually, which is astonishing. The AM in the Pro-Am entry there is not actually that far away from Perellini.
No, he's having a good run so far. Going back to what we were saying about the 2 17-year-olds, of course, Aaron Walker, of course, was joined at the hip with Anthony Bartone when they were making their way through the championship. They managed to score a P10 and a P7 at Red Bull Ring last time out. That has been their only point-scoring position so far this season. Steve Yans now up to 10th place ahead of Laurent de Meus, so he now makes it into the top 10 and is currently sat 4th place in the Pro-Am classification. A little reminder for those of you as well that the red means Pro, the blue means Pro-Am, green means Am. And after investigation instant, cars 6 and 65, car 6, 3-second time penalty to be added to the race time. And that is, of course, the James Wallace car that came together with that of Timo Rumpf, Kyle.
Yeah, so that was the one that Aaron Walker had during his stint, and he's now taken a 3-second time penalty for that. And so suddenly the race-leading car is under big pressure to try and build up as much of an advantage as possible in the remaining 21 and a bit minutes in this race. Currently, the gap is 1.6.
Yeah, And they need it to be yet another 1.5, ideally, just to keep it home and hose. 3 seconds they need to place on top of their time after crossing the start-finish line. We've still got a small matter, though, of 21 and 20 minutes to find. As we take a look, Aaron Walker there watching on pensively in the garage as his teammates. James Wallace leads here at Monza, but the big question is, can they consolidate it with a 3-second advantage? We've got a battle further down. Enter Nick Moss, a 3 wide, heading down in towards the Kerber Alboreto section, and of course that being Heiko Neumann, who currently holds on to that 13th place. Sees Nick Moss now jettison up higher than him as they enter now the final corner down the home main straight. Enter car 51 of Riccardo Agostini as well, of course, who swapped in instead of Marin Angeli. Goes side by side with Neumann as they head down towards turn 1. Agostini with a straight line speed in the Ferrari. He's going to look to perhaps gamble here on Nick Moss as well, who is watching all this unfold. Also, other cars in the mix in all this. Giuseppe Cipriani also in the midst of this fight. It's a massive 5-car scramble. Nick Moss, though, heading it with Riccardo Agostini gaining a place.
Yeah, and Yannick Mettler going to try and take 2 places in one. Here's Heiko Neumann. Had a big swapper there going towards the Curva Grande, and both Cipriani and Mettler just able to avoid it, and actually that's cost Mettler his run on Cipriani because he had to get out of the throttle.
Yannick Mettler very nearly threading the needle through past both of Heiko Neumann and also Giuseppe Cipriani. Stanislav Jedlinski, we just saw in the background there, the Oregon team cars still chasing after Wallace, and they've brought the gap to within a second. It's 8 tenths now. So Pierre-Louis Chauvet, who's now got himself, should I say, acclimatized to the current conditions. It is not over just yet, because James Wallace now has got the Oregon Lamborghini chasing after him down towards turn 1. This race is hotting up, and look at Pirolini as well, not too far away, 3.3 seconds, with Jedlinski still holding on to 4th.
Yeah, so the gap's doing the opposite of what Get Speed needed to do at the moment. He needs to be going out to cover off the penalty. Instead, Chauvet's bringing it down. He was about 3 tenths quicker on that, 1.3 seconds quicker on that previous lap. So a mighty lap there from Pierre-Louis Chauvet. And now suddenly James Wallace, having taken the lead of the race, is going to find himself under big pressure. And look at that, he's gone deep into the chicane there as well. That's just going to give Chauvet even more hope that he can retake the lead of this race. Of course, he doesn't have to pass Wallace because he'll inherit the lead anyway, but probably wants to spend more time ahead of him. And this could be the moment here, because Wallace looking for grip, looking to cool the tires, I'm sure of it as well, because he's been doing it on the front straight as well. But this could be the moment. The Lamborghini has been pretty good in a straight line compared to the Mercedes, who has been given a bit of an additional performance in that area, but side by side now, not quite. So James Wallace just able to keep Chauvet at bay for now.
Yeah, Respar also taking the fastest lap of the race as well. 5 seconds to be added to the race time of the 9:11 Steve Jans in 9th place. We saw as well Agostini go ahead of Nick Moss now, but take a look at this. Pierre-Louis Chauvet still on the tail of James Wallace, who leads the way, at least for now, with 18 minutes on the clock. Still to go. Oregon perhaps chasing bigger dreams here in this race, and the tiger line here for Pierre-Louis Chauvet on the outside of the Alboreto corner. He takes the lead here at Monza. The Temple of Speed now lit up with the sight of an Oregon car taking the lead. The pirate ship takes the front, and now 2 tenths clear of James Wallace in second.
Nice little line there out of, but look at this, Wallace coming back at him under brakes. This is amazing braking performance from the Get Speed Mercedes, and Wallace takes it back.
Incredible swap here, heading through the Rettifilio. James Wallace defiant in the face of danger as they head through towards the Curva Grande. Now again they swap, going defensive goes Wallace. Chauvet trying to come back straight at him here as they enter the Curva Grande. They've got the Rogier to come, cars in front of them here. Chauvet swapping left and right again, looks towards the Rogier, still can't quite find a way through, but this is blissful racing here at the International GTOpen.
This is sensational, this is absolutely brilliant, and look at this, Pirolini's closing in on them as well, side by side once again towards the first Lesmo, and Chauvet gets round the outside. Sensational. sensational move here from the Lamborghini driver. Can Wallace do anything with that? We've got the run now towards Ascari, a long straight coming in, but Chauvet looks like he might have this one covered, but the Mercedes is very good in a straight line. Bit of traffic coming up ahead of them. It's the 88, it's the only car in front of them for quite a while, so they should be okay on that front, but Wallace has got no answer here for Chauvet.
Yeah, Pierre-Louis Chauvet now back in front. A great bit of swapping between the pair. Rhys Barr now up into 11th place. He unseats Laurent de Meus as we now take a look at the replay of the moment. And I tell you what, credit to James Wallace, who brought it back round Curva Grande. Looked like he lost it heading in towards the Rettifilio, but have a look at the tenacity here of Pierre-Louis Chauvet. Outside line at the Lesmo. Lesmo won. That is how you do it. And there could be, once again, a complication here for Wallace here, because now he's in amongst all this traffic, trying to get past the A. Of course, it's cost him time. Pietro Pirolini will have his chance as well. And don't forget the 3-second time penalty. That could very easily swing Pirolini's way.
It really could as well. So Pirolini's got massive momentum down this straight now, as Wallace was getting really held up there by the 88 of Gino Forchioni. And look at that, George. Praise be, the sun has come out for the first time in about 4 or 5 hours, I feel like.
Well, absolutely astonishing. And what a moment. And this was where, of course, we saw the move executed heading through the first Lesmo, and dazzling as it was. Pierre-Louis Chauvet, you can watch that time and time again. Jerry Cannaviccio, just look at that. That's the calmest I've ever seen him.
Very tame of him, yeah. That's fantastic.
I've seen Jerry, right, when he's at his best. He is certainly electrifying when he responds to certain moves, but a very pensive one. But Pietro Pirolini now is looking to try and embody perhaps and overtake himself.
But George, when was the last time you saw a proper swap and change battle like that? That was real tit-for-tat stuff, and James Wallace doing an incredible job here.
This is his debut.
Yeah, this is absolutely. I mean, it's still his first season of GT3 racing. He started out this year in the GT4 class of the British GT.
He looks like he's been doing it for years, to be quite honest.
You couldn't tell. He's doing a sterling job out there at the moment, and yes, now has got to hold back the advances of Pietro Pirolini in the sister Oregon car, who, as it stands, well, will inherit that place anyway, because Wallace has got the 3-second time penalty. But, of course, the Italian outfit of Oregon Lamborghini poised here for a 1-2 finish at their home track.
Yeah, which would be a grand occasion, and not to mention important points in the championship as well, especially as we're heading in towards race 2 tomorrow, not to mention the final round of the championship where everything gets decided, and they know all about deciders, Chris, because they went through it last year.
Absolutely, and do you know what, in all of this, we've completely forgotten about our championship leaders, who are currently split by about 3.5 seconds. Diego Menchaca in 6th, Charlie Fagg in 7th. As it stands, the Motorpark car would take the lead in the championship because they're only separated by a point. So it's basically whoever comes out on top in these races at the moment. But I dare say Charlie Fagg will have something to say about that before this race is up.
Well, absolutely. I mean, he's only 3.5 behind, and with 13 minutes and 25 still to go, Steve Jans is now up to 7th. Polchini now down to 9th. Fagg now up to 8th. So a lot happening there in the down in the bottom half of the top 10, as we're now seeing the scrap starting to unfurl. Pietro Pirolini now looking to try and close up here on James Wallace. Again, he's within a second and trying to hover within the aero, and a flash of the lights here, a twinkle to say, I'm here, you're not alone. 2 Oregon cars want a piece of you. Pirolini is next.
Certainly is. Going great for both cars at the moment. It's a night and day scenario to what we saw 2 weeks ago at the Red Bull Ring, where everything was going the 63's way, and the 19 was having a bit of a mare. There was the fuel pump problem, of course, that caused Pirolini to grind to a halt in the middle of race 1 at Red Bull Ring. No such problems for them so far this weekend, and Oregon here poised for a 1-2 if Pirolini can either just hang on to the back of Wallace or, better yet, get ahead of him as well. And even if Pirolini gets past him, I think the Get Speed team here are poised for a podium, because they are about 15 seconds ahead of Marcin Jedlinski in 4th place. But now we're going to see what Parolini is made of. We have seen him get his elbows out in previous races, primarily with Nicola Marinangeli. But this is going to be a good scrap here. And look, Wallace is looking for any wet patches he can find at the moment. So we've seen how brilliant he is under braking for the first corner. So clearly there's some compromises going on there, I'd have thought. But Parolini's right with Wallace now.
Yeah, he is. He's not far away. The gap now very minute as they enter the Curva Grande yet again. He just seems to have found a little bit more heading through the Rettofilo chicane as we take a look at Marcin Jedlinski, who's got Christopher Haase now for company, as well as Steve Jans, who is looking to try and launch himself further and further up the field. He's already ahead of Diego Menchaca, who has now got Charlie Fag barrowing down on him. 2.5 seconds out of the gap. Remember, that was 3.5 only a small matter of time ago, and it's now starting again. But also, Pietro Pirolini is threatening and asking the major questions here of James Wallace. He, of course, would see Pierre-Louis Chauvet make the move that would give him and grant him the race lead. Pirolini chasing also a potential upgrade on his podium, even despite the time penalty that would still gift it to him. It's always better to do it on track. And certainly here down the Seraglio straight, Pietro Pirolini, not disillusioned with that fact, is still gunning for James Wallace.
Well, the street art car, they're still going with front left missing. So no need to go into the pits there, I imagine. But yeah, Parolini mounting the pressure here on this young 17-year-old Parolini. A Lamborghini instructor knows this car inside and out. Whereas Wallace, he has been driving Mercedes for a good couple of years now across different classes. As we see, Haas has got himself up into 4th place as well, but he's some 17 seconds behind this battle as the 2nd and 3rd place cars got around that street art car. Neither of them gets compromised, thankfully. Heading out onto the front straight now, and again we see Wallace hunting for the wet line, try and cool those tyres off. Parolini tucking right into the slipstream. It just doesn't look like that car's quite got the legs on the straight to mount a serious challenge. He is still a few kilometers an hour faster with the slipstream, but it's not enough to put him ahead.
No, not at all. Pietro Pirolini once again taking a very aggressive look, heading down the inside of the Rettofilo, and once again heads out towards Curva Grande in pursuit of James Wallace, just making him well aware that he is right behind him here, heading down towards the Roggia now. He'll swap over to the left and to the right, but to the left this time and towards the Roggia as he goes aggressive, takes it now, but runs in towards the off-track section, and now I'm sure we'll have to give that back to James Wallace yet again. But I like the tenacity, I like Pietro Pirolini, what he's bringing to the table here. He wants P2 and he wants it the right way.
Yeah, super aggressive stuff, and Wallace getting it all crossed up on the exit. The first Lesmo just dipping 2 wheels into the gravel there, and no sign yet of Parolini giving this place back. This is how Haase took 4th place away from Jedlinski. It's Audi versus Audi. But the works driver getting the far superior run out of the 2nd chicane and dragging straight clear. And he has set about bringing that gap down, but I doubt he's going to be able to make too many inroads in the remaining 8.5 minutes in this race. Look at the gap that Chauvet's been able to pull while these two are squabbling. He's some 12 seconds to the good now. And look at this. I think this is Wallace being let back through because Parolini went off the track at the 2nd chicane, but he's going to try and get back down the inside, so confirmation he had to give the place back, but he wanted to try and be sneaky about it, and they're still side by side here through the final corner. This could be Parolini's best opportunity yet. If he can stick it out here on the inside, he's getting a little bit of that side draft as well. And he will have the inside line this time, but we know how good Wallace has been on the brakes for the first corner. He's done it twice to Chauvet. Can he outbrake Parolini here to try and hang on to this 2nd place? Gets across up, goes straight on, and Parolini here surely is going to come out in 2nd place.
He should do as well, taking the escape road, James Wallace. Pietro Pirolini confirmed 2nd here with 7 minutes and 35 to go under these conditions that have certainly improved as the race has gone on. The sun is out and shining, and Oregon now is celebrating with a car in 1st, a car in 2nd, a lockout they would have wanted back at Red Bull Ring, where they took pole and P2 heading into the start of race 1. But this time they can celebrate the big prizes, but they still have a small matter of 7 minutes to go in this race before they can be decided of that fact.
This has been sensational. I mean, what a race. What a race. It's been brilliant stuff. And yeah, it gets me really sticking it to the Oregons where they can. But yeah, they've just got too much speed by the looks of it, and Haase some 12 seconds back. Now, of course, there's the 3-second penalty to take, but hopefully Gatsby can hang on here for what would be a first podium of the season for them. And yeah, here it is again. So Perellini was on the inside, and Wallace just got too deep on the brakes there. Yeah, a round of applause from the Oregon garage, seeing their cars 1 and 2 at the moment. And just checking further back as well,
still
because Steve Jans has taken the Pro-Am lead while we were watching that away from Marcin Jedlinski. Steve Jans has been on absolute fire. I mean, he passed the top 2 in the championship in consecutive laps a little bit earlier on, and now into the Pro-Am lead in the other, the Pro-Am Get Speed car as well. So a really great weekend for them. And oh, look at that, that's Cipriani and Medler banging doors on the way into the first corner.
The message is still going out. Last reminder for car 19, must give the place back to car 6. So James Wallace, not out of the question just yet. So Perellini needs to give it back.
So maybe they don't quite consider what Perellini did at the Parabolica, which was borderline.
It was borderline, toe-to-toe.
So they're not happy with it. And look, he's giving it back now.
He is giving it back. So there we have it. James Wallace will retake second place, but Perellini is not going to go down without a fight. This is not over. But of course, don't forget, James Wallace still has those 5 seconds.
Yes, he does. Or is it 3?
3 seconds.
So I think it is 3, yes. So Wallace back into second place. I almost wonder if Perellini will just sit behind Wallace at this point, because it's been quite difficult to get around him, actually. But yeah, just finish up what I was saying earlier. So Steve Jans into the Pro-Am lead with all that. Jedlinski into second. Reese Barr's flown up the order. He's in 6th place as well. Menchaca and Fag still line astern, but a lot closer together. Only 8/10 separate them in 8th and 9th at the moment. Really scrapping for points here in what is the championship battle, but we're absolutely enthralled by this battle for second place at the moment. Chauvet's advantage has increased to 16 seconds now. And look at this, is the Olymp car here being lapped going to play a part in this battle, because Wallace has navigated him, and Perellini has to wait to get on the throttle here. And look at the gap that he's lost in that time as well, because of Stanislav Jedlinski in the Olymp Ferrari.
Yeah, and unfortunately now it's cost a shed load of time, and there's Haase. Christopher Haase is not far away either, and with 4 minutes and 20 to go, currently sat 7.5, at least that was when the time was last recognised. It's going to get closer, because obviously Perellini came very close with Stanislav Jedlinski, held him up. It was a very timely move from James Wallace to make that overtake. Needed to get it done there and then, because now it's given him plenty of space in between him and Perellini, but he still needs to advance the gap from 1.1 seconds to at least 3.
Well, yeah, the podium is not out of the question at all for Haase here, especially when you consider James Wallace has that 3-second penalty, and he's catching them hand over fist as well. He was, look at that, he was 9 seconds faster than Perellini last time around. Christopher Haase is flying at the moment. So this is a bit further down the order. This is, so that's Fag, who's just lost out to Agostini here, and Agostini are now trying to get around Menchaca as well for 8th spot. And Agostini, can he get around the outside here? No, he cannot. Random Fuminelli fastest lap from 13th place there. But yeah, what is happening with the second place battle? Perellini's got back up to Wallace. Of course, this battle we're watching here is important in terms of the championship. And oh, look at that 3-second time penalty for the Mettler, Muller, Mercedes as well. That's a shame for them. But this battle for second place, and look, they're coming up on more traffic now. The Murat Radoroglu 133 Kessel Ferrari, as well as Wallace leads Perellini into Ascari. Less than 3 minutes left on the clock now, George.
It certainly is now, and you can see the gap has slimmed up yet again between the two cars in second and third place. Perellini looking to try and consolidate the second. Of course, he will receive it nonetheless due to the penalties, but once again, they've got another car in front of them that could be potentially holding them up. That, of course, being the Murat Radoroglu car. And, of course, we alluded to the fact that he is celebrating his 60th birthday this weekend, as we now see them come out up and under. Agostini now ahead of Menchaca as well. He's up to 8th. as we now see the two come together again. It's Oregon and Mercedes heading down the straight. It's still Pirolini trying to get himself in the tow and chasing that second, but still can't quite find it.
And bad news for the 777 Olymp car. Their pit stop is under investigation, presumably for not serving the handicap correctly. That's usually what it's about. But we'll go back to this battle for second place, because Pirolini here, it looks like he's got a run here on Wallace. And yes, Christopher Haase is right in this fight as well. He's only 2 seconds behind them. While these guys have been squabbling, he's been working at bringing down that gap hand over fist. And right in the slipstream here is Pirolini. Now, he tried a few laps ago to get up the inside here. Will he try the same move again? Oh, he's lost it!
No,
Pirolini's rounded into the barriers, and they have lost a potential 1-2 finish here for Oregon.
Oh my goodness me, that was a major moment. Switched onto the grass, lost the grip, and hurtled into the barrier. He is going to be absolutely distraught. And you just saw the look from Dan Arrow as well. He is also gutted. A chance at a P2 has left the Oregon team here at this point, and with a minute to go, they are now only one car here, now appearing on the podium places. Oh, tragedy here at this point.
Yeah, absolutely awful. So look at that, it was such a late jink out, and with the track condition the way it is,
it's caught him out.
It's just caught him out, and backwards into the Armco barrier.
He's gone onto
into
the grass
tech
on the
as well.
left-hand side.
Yeah, he ended up on the grass as well. So, oh, absolutely gutting. Oh, and Pietro is fuming at himself.
Yeah.
Apologies to any Italian listeners who could make out what he was saying there, but Pietro Pirolini absolutely distraught with that, and understandably so, because this was turning into his and Dan Arrow's best weekend of the season. For the team, it's still great news. Chauvet 22 seconds to the good now, and now look at this, it's still for second place. So Haase now on the back of Wallace. And I was watching to see if there was going to be a safety car. I think they're going to cover it under waved yellows for this final lap. So that's great news for Gatsby, because it means the pack won't be bunched up and risk them losing the podium with Wallace's 3-second time penalty here. So even if Haase gets past here, he should still be on the podium. But Haase trying to get past Wallace here on this final lap, but he can't do it into turn 4 because it's waved yellows.
Yeah, no, he can't. And absolutely going back to the 3-second time penalty, it certainly won't hinder, because Steve Jans is 7 seconds, now 6.6 in behind. So by the time they cross the line, obviously by the time the penalty becomes a factor, it won't change the result, unless, of course, they finish with Haase out in front, because, of course, he's still hunting for that second place regardless. Out of Lesmo 2, they will, of course, tackle the Seraglio straight. The Audi straight line speed has been impressive all weekend. We've seen it time and time again with Carol Bash. Christopher Haase now looking to try and give us a show of his own, heading in towards Ascari. Would love to make the move prior to crossing the start-finish line to end the race. Can't quite do it. Incredible defence from James Wallace, continuously right through the very end. But what can we say about this one? Oregon team, they started at the front, they're finishing front. It's going to be Pierre-Louis Chauvet and Maximilian Paul. They win at Monza, but now as we see the two coming down towards the final corner at Alboreto, Christopher Haase hunting down the inside on James Wallace. Wallace though once again consolidating the place. He won't be able to hold on to it though, because Christopher Haase, despite not managing to jump him, he might get a run though heading down towards the start-finish line. They're going to run wheel to wheel. Haase now up towards the line, will finish in P2. Wallace finishes in third. What a race here, Chris.
Yeah, so Haase did get him at the line there by 0.02 of a second. The final gap 3.02 with that penalty applied. Welcome to the GTOpen, James Wallace. Sensational performance. What a race, George. That was stunning. And our teams that were 3rd and 4th in the championship that needed a big result and take big chunks out of the championship leaders, 1st and 2nd. And where are our championship leaders? They haven't even crossed the line yet. They're down in 9th and 10th.
They certainly are, and I have to tell you, folks, incredible moment indeed. Menchaca 9th, Fang 10th, they will score points. Wow. And the way it steps up as well, because of the mere point that they've sustained, I believe that does draw the championship level here at this point.
So there we
go. We're now no deficit between the top two, and there is a very despondent Pietro Pirolini, who without a doubt is going to be absolutely you know, besotted with and distraught with everything that has happened. Obviously, Chauvet and Paul, the team will celebrate victory here once again, and you know, an incredible rise in the Oregon team in recent rounds.
You're right about the championship, George, because they were separated by a point, and the motorpower cars gained 1 there, so they're level on points.
They're level on points.
But what it's...
The deficit is down to 0 here in the championship.
But the Optimum car will be classed ahead because it's got an extra win.
Yeah, it's on countback. The countback rule, of course, the Oregon team will hold on. The Optimum car should be up the sharp end. But looking at all this right now, a phenomenal moment here, and nevertheless, despite the hardships, losing Pietro Pirolini's car, this is something the team can celebrate. Max Paul, yet another race win to add to his locker, and it's his fourth this season. Pierre-Louis Chauvet and Maximilian Paul bringing it home, and another victory for Oregon. Simon Riker and Christopher Haas are in second, James Wallace and Aaron Walker in third, Axel Blom and Steve Jans in fourth, Marinangeli Agostini fifth, Reese Barr and Pitamba in sixth, Yusei and Fuminelli seventh, Pavlovich and Joe Javanil in eighth, Menchaca and Neubauer in ninth, Dahan and Fag in 10th. In 11th place, we then saw Marcin Jedlinski, Marco Polcini in 12th, Lauren DeMeus in 13th, with Nicolo Rossi in 14th, Lewis Proctor and Stuart Proctor 15th place, Yannick Mettler and Dexter Muller 16th, Conrad Grunwald 17th place, with Giuseppe Cipriani in 18th, with Giorgio Sinigiotto and Alessandro Cosi in 19th, Heiko Neumann and Timo Rumpkarl in 20th, Philip Barron 21st place with Ernest Kirkmeyer, Murat Chiradaroglu 22nd, with Gino Forgione in 23rd, Pietro Pirolini after the heartbreak, obviously 24th place at that point. But let's take you through the Drivers' Championship, folks, because that was truly special, and confirmation that the points are now stacked level, 0 deficit between Charlie Alexander Hahn and Diego Menchaca, the Optimum team pairing only leading on mere count.
And look at this, the East Talent is suddenly 5 points away from the championship leader. We've got a proper 3-car, I mean, you may as well make it 4, with Oregon still with an outside shot, but East Talent have launched back into title contention now.
It has. It was a huge result for them, and Christopher Haas is going to be absolutely thrilled. Second place here in this race will grant them a fabulous result. And also, while they still have the 3-second time penalty, plaudits have got to be given to that of James Wallace and Aaron Walker. But credit where credit's due, Pierre-Louis Chauvet and Maximilian Paul bringing it home in outrageous style. And 26.1 seconds was the time at the very end between them in second and first. And you can just imagine the response we're going to see from the Oregon team. There's going to be a roar, to say the least, and Chauvet and Paul, who have worked so well as a partnership this season. Of course, Chauvet had a very tough start. He had opportunities himself, had a great result back at Paul Ricard. He would eventually get his shot and take victory, and this is not the first time he's crossed the start-finish line. He can enjoy that feeling once again, and it's twice now that, obviously, that we've seen them take pole. They took their 3rd pole today, and you can just imagine what the reaction's going to be, but incredible. There is Pierre-Louis Chauvet. Congratulations being shared already.
4th win in 6 races for that.
Incredible record, isn't it?
That is some form. I mean, since Hungary, they've just come alive.
They actually have the most wins in the championship.
Yeah,
right
by
now.
far.
So it's an extraordinary. But here's the incident again with Pietro Pirolini, and it
painful to watch.
Breaks your heart every time you see it, because you know what was on the line here.
Yeah.
An Oregon 1-2, and this is the reaction from Dan Arrow, and yeah, you can imagine.
Very similar to what we were doing.
It was actually. Yeah, I mean, I was having my own meltdown. But yeah, absolutely outrageous. Top 3 that will take you through them. James Wallace taking a dynamite 3rd place on his debut here this season alongside that of Aaron Walker. But what a performance from Christopher Haas. That second stint was so vital. They're now in contention for the championship when we head into our race tomorrow, and of course the final round. And also Pierre-Louis Chauvet and Max Paul, they are your winners, and they are standing by with Alfredo Filipponi.
Pierre-Louis Chauvet, Maximilian Paul, another victory, but this one was tough. We start with Pierre-Louis, who brought the car back to the checkered flag after some good fighting?
Yeah, we start with really low pressures for Max, but of course he did a super job this morning. So we started P1, then he dropped to P2 and regained P1. And after we had the 10-second handicap, so of course I had to fight on slick tires with a dump track. So it was really tricky to overtake, especially in the traffic, because only one line was dry. But in the end we made it, so super happy and great job from him.
Yeah, great job from Max also, fighting also in the beginning of the race.
Yeah, it was nice. Carol did a really good job and was very quick at the beginning. So yeah, it was hard for me in the first 3-4 laps, but then we regained the position and we were able to be consistently in front. And then it was, let's say, quite a poker to see which tires we're going to put for the second stint. And obviously, it was the right choice to put slicks. And yeah, Pierre did a good job to finish the race on P1. And now we are very happy for our 4th victory this season.
Good. Celebrate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, they have great reason to celebrate. A truly fantastic race. We're going to take you through the highlights after that one. And it got started under the safety car, of course, the rain coming down time after time leading up to the start of the International GT Open race. But it did manage to stop, but still a very wet track. But we took the green flag and got racing again. Maximilian Paul, of course, put in the Oregon car on pole position, so he led the way in the initial stint. Carol Bash, though, however, had an electric start, got away very strongly, as did Timo Rumpfkarl as well, getting past out of Aaron Walker. But this was the major moment. Carol Bash taking the lead, heading through the Kerber Alboreto in the initial stages of the race. We saw a moment as well for Stuart Proctor, who unfortunately spun the car, his Greystone GT McLaren finding its way off the track. But then Maximilian Paul, in absolute defiance, would retake the lead, heading down in towards the Rettifilio. A great moment for the Oregon team as they led the way in the initial stint. We then, of course, saw the driver change window come to play, and Pierre-Louis Chauvet would jump into the car in place of Maximilian Paul, who really did utilise his first stint. Chauvet would be in battle right from the get-go, of course, coming under pressure from James Wallace, who put out an incredible debut display to take the lead for a brief portion, with Pierre-Louis Chauvet still breathing down his neck. They would make their way down through towards the Lesmo 1, and a pure move of brilliance here from that of Pierre-Louis Chauvet would retake the lead for the Oregon team car and consolidate that performance. Certainly here as well, we saw the Oregon car coming unstuck through the Roggia, tangling up with James Wallace, Pietro Pirolini getting onto the grass, spinning the car, and unfortunately it ended up in the barrier. But it would not stop Pierre-Louis Chauvet or Max Paul. They took victory here at Monza. And now the podium celebrations will be in full swing, and a huge crowd have gathered outside our commentary box as they await the drivers to make their way out. But interesting point of note, Chris, the slick tyres were a factor.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I was wondering if anybody made it out there on the slicks, and it wouldn't surprise me as well if the East Talent team did the same thing, given the rate at which they were able to catch James Wallace. And it would also make sense why, in certain parts of the track, James Wallace was so much faster. Such a, under braking for the first corner, for example. If there was a wetter patch there and he was on wet tyres, that would explain why he was able to get such a much better run through there. So yeah, absolutely makes sense. But it'll be fascinating hearing from these drivers afterwards. And the good news is we're only just to the left of this podium. We're going to speak straight to them. But yeah, great. Aaron Walker, James Wallace. First race together, James Wallace first race in the GTOpen, only the third one for Aaron Walker as well. Up on the podium, gets his first overall performance podium of the weekend as well. And here comes Jerry Canovizio with the pirate flag for the Oregon team. It's just a fantastic team of passion. And on that note, the Italian national anthem.
Well, there we have it, and the national anthem, of course, the Italian one roaring here, and it's home country of Italy. And the Oregon team also let out a mighty roar as the ship sailed across the line, the pirate flag unveiled by Jerry Cannaviccio once again. A team that would go all the way to clinching the title last season. They have a chance to do it again this time. They're within the points ratio to do it. There's every chance. Anything can happen in racing. We use that phrase time and time again, but it doesn't make it any less true.
That race proved that more than anything. What a race.
Yeah, well, we look at this now. East Talent have given themselves also a great chance of doing great things this season. Christopher Haasser and Simon Riker have every right to be thrilled with the performance. This P2 could be the difference maker for their season.
And still yet to win a race. I mean, they've come so close so many times, but their big thing has been consistency, and they've had things getting in the way of that, things out of their control. When it is in their control, you get performances like that, and they're always up on the podium.
They certainly are. Celebrations, you can hear the cheers and the crowd themselves who have turned out to watch their teams, and obviously to celebrate alongside with them as well, because these results certainly do mean a lot. And now the champagne being unfurled as well. Obviously the Oregon team not generally keen to stick around. Obviously the overalls have got to be used tomorrow, but I'll tell you what, these four aren't too worried.
That one's got to be celebrated, I think. Fantastic job there by
exciting partnership, this James Wallace and Aaron Walker.
It's got potential, isn't it? I mean, it's young, dynamic lineup coming up. Aaron's been brought up from British GT into GT World Challenge. He's moved across from there to the GTOpen to do a little bit of development on him, and James Wallace getting the same sort of treatment there, being brought up from British GT. And yeah, that's a great lineup. I'm really excited to see where it goes. Now, of course, we've got two other podiums. We've got the Pro-Am podium. In the midst of all the overall fighting, we did neglect the other ones a little bit, just because it was so darn good. So it's Steve Jans and Axel Blom for GetSpeed. So double triumph for GetSpeed here with their overall podium, and the Pro-Am win here in their 911 Mercedes, taking the overall win. David Fuminelli and Frederick Yusei are going to be in second place in their Kessel Ferrari, and then Milos Pavlovic for the Bonaldi crew as well, the Lamborghini in 33. We'll join them on the podium.
Steve Jans now taking to the top step as well, alongside Axel Blom as well.
I'll tell you what, for Sampo and João Javanil, this morning stuck it in the barriers in qualifying.
Now not a bad result,
on
really.
The podium there alongside Pavlovic, so he's done a great job there.
Yeah, Milos Pavlovic and Sampo and João Javanil managing to capture the P3 here in the Pro-Am affair. And it was a big scrap as well. Great result for Frederick Yusei as well, finishing second. Of course, he's had his own battles, getting used to the car and also getting used to the championship here. But alongside David Fuminelli, who is a vastly experienced driver that has delivered many great results, a superb qualifier as well, who I've had the opportunity of watching over the last couple of years. And he truly has been phenomenal, and certainly a great coach, I'd imagine, for Frederick Yusei too.
Yeah, they don't come much better, do they? Must be said. Great result there for Steve Jans and Axel Blom as well. Very happy with how things are going at GetSpeed, and that's a big result in terms of the Pro-Am Championship as well, because of course the top four in the standings not on that podium there, so it's going to be a very different looking championship when we get the paperwork tonight.
Absolutely. I imagine there'll be quite a few investigations looked at. Of course, the stewards were very busy during the course of the race as well.
I think there are a couple outstanding, actually, Josh. So it's one to keep an eye out for.
We've got team managers of car 54, 25, and the treble 7 to report to the stewards after the podium. So there is obviously further discussions to be had. Conrad Grunwald having some discussions with Jean-Claude Sarda as well at this point. And of course, these two were very successful at the Golf 12 Hour only a small matter ago. And of course, a drift star as well, Conrad Grunwald, back in his home country of the USA, and is also exceptionally competent in behind the wheel of a GT3 car in race trim too. So great to see those guys back at the top end. Of course, they were the winners of the AM classification ahead of Giuseppe Cipriani and Giorgio Sinegiotto, and of course Giorgio's teammate Alessandro Cosi as well. So they're going to be standing tall on the podium.
2A, of course, the Ferrari cars there, first and third, Baron Rampante, the Lamborghini, and Giuseppe Cipriani, a solo driver, there, second in class. That ended up being very closely fought in the end, only 1.3 seconds separating the top two in the end on that one. And in fact, the top four only covered by around 6 seconds. So that was very closely fought towards the end of the race there.
Yeah, it certainly was that. Of course, Giuseppe Cipriani, a veteran of this particular championship, and has been a class champion in his own right historically, and is now once again tasting the champagne once again, this time on second position on the podium.
Now, George, we've learned this weekend not to trust the weather forecast.
No.
But the forecast for tomorrow says it's going to be perfectly dry.
Yeah. Do you
so
believe it?
Same again tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that, Chris. But yes, no, major congratulations to those on the podium right now as well. The AM class certainly have delivered plentifully, and courteous handshakes as well from Giuseppe Cipriani, and receiving their trophies as well, Jean-Claude Sada and Conrad Grunwald. And folks, make sure you join us tomorrow morning for qualifying for race 2 of the GT Open. We'll see you then. Goodbye.